Hello, and welcome to another episode of Solutionaries here on Regenerative Media TV in partnership with Golden Road TV and Radio. I'm your host, Michael DiMartino, and I'm really happy to be here to showcase another very important issue and an amazing person who has really taken up this initiative to spread awareness and to make positive change in the world. So, obviously, most of us are aware of a lot of things that are happening in the world around climate change, around ecological collapse, and also we're very aware of most recently the devastating fires in Lahaina in Maui, Hawaii. This is kind of related to that, but this is a whole other rabbit hole of exploration and awareness we're going to go down in regards to lab engineered mosquitoes being used to help supposedly curb the different illnesses and symptoms that are happening in Hawaii regarding mosquitoes. So again, thanks for tuning in. And with that, I'd like to introduce our guest today. She is live in Maui right now, not directly in the affected zone from the fire, but again, this is just another stacked top of the recent fires there, on stacked on top of issues with the plans for more development and what I would call certainly not green, but misdevelopment in Maui, which of course is a island paradise that many people enjoy. And we had the honor to speak with our next guest during the Build Back Green event a couple of weeks ago, and also speaking with some of the local Hawaiian indigenous communities, some of the kahunas related to indigenous bridges. But today we're really going to take some time, about 20 to 30 minutes, to really hone in on what's happening there with these lab engineered mosquitoes. So I'd like to introduce Tina Leah from Hawaii Unites. So welcome to Solution.
Aloha, can you hear me there? We're having a little bit of a connection.
You there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep. It's all
Okay.
you. If you give us a little background about you and this initiative.
Yes, thank you so much for having me and for the opportunity to share more about what's going on here, raise awareness about these mosquitoes, which do tie into, I believe, what happened here more recently, and just an overall targeting of our islands, really. So basically what we're working on here is challenging the state and its multi-agency partnerships plan to release billions of these lab-infected mosquitoes on our natural reserve area up here, East Maui. It's 64,666 acres. And so we're very concerned about what can happen there with the native birds that the project is supposed to be protecting from avian malaria. The mosquitoes actually could become more capable of transmitting that. They haven't even looked into that possibility. And it could transmit possibly human diseases, and again, billions of these mosquitoes, and they want to do this indefinitely, and there's a lot more to their motivations for that, I think. So we're definitely concerned.
Yeah, obviously, and it's interesting because you and I met through a mutual colleague, Rachel Linden from Green Lifestyles Network, who's also part of non-toxic communities, that's been doing a lot of work around the amount of herbicides and pesticides and insecticides that have been introduced into our environment, whether that's through golf courses, schools, parks, but nonetheless the poisoning of our environment and our watershed, and really affecting seriously the health of people in these communities. So she had connected us literally the day after I saw on YouTube a video of literally the helicopter releasing millions, if not billions, of these lab engineered mosquitoes. So let's rewind for a minute. If we could just know something about Tina Leah, who you are, some of the work that you do, maybe it's pertinent or not. And then, how did you get inspired to really, I guess, spearhead and take on this essential initiative?
Yeah, so I've been a researcher just independently and a journalist for many years, and very involved in the last couple of years with making sure that we know what's going on in our communities with things that are infringing on our health and our freedoms and our rights and all of that. So I definitely was on top of different things happening in these last couple of years. And so as soon as I heard about this mosquito project, which was over a year ago, I knew that we needed to look further into it, that it was a very dangerous prospect. I knew about the release of mosquitoes just from having read about that over the years. And so I began researching and finding out more about the project and addressing, some of the things that I was concerned about, and finding out that I had every reason to be concerned. And it didn't feel like there was enough attention on it in the community, and it seemed that there was a need for somebody to take this on. And so that's what I began doing, and getting as much documentation as I could, looking at the agency's own documents for the project. I've been working, speaking with a tropical disease expert who first alerted me to a lot of the concerns about this, and just building our organization so that we could take this on and challenge the state in court, which is what we're doing.
So I want to commend you because a lot of times, I for years worked with Rachel on what we call the Water Protector Tour in California, bringing awareness about mega drought, mega water contamination through insecticides, herbicides, pesticides, also industrial agriculture. And then on top of that, golf courses, parks, schools that are basically poisoning our children and our communities. And one of the amazing things I found is that, maybe people will show up and feel inspired to get involved for a moment, but to really move these types of initiatives and campaigns forward does take a certain level of commitment, follow through, and tenacity. So I want to first and foremost commend you for your effort to help kind of bring this to awareness, because um, for many of us in our communities right now, we're enduring such a onslaught of different issues, whether it's environmental, economic, political, many different arenas to the human experience and to society. But it really takes a dedication and follow through, not just showing up at an event and, raising your hand and saying, I'm concerned, and then kind of going back to sleep. So again, big props and support for you and getting this important issue out, because even though it's happening in Maui, again, this could be just a testing ground for a larger long-term deployment, which is kind of a military term that we use. We also relate that to some of the weather modification and geoengineering that's happening, which again is not a conspiracy, because the government has come out through media and said, yeah, we are doing this. We're doing weather modification and we're doing stuff to explore using geoengineering around climate change and these things. So again, I know people can easily, well, that's just a conspiracy, but if people have more than a one moment attention span and do their due diligence and actually research, they'll find out really what's going on. So again, I want to commend you, and let's dig right into what is going on with the time that we have, and try to get people inspired to become part of this initiative to stop this from happening. Because of course, many people are familiar with genetically modified food. We're definitely aware of the health implications and the green climate change marketing that's wrapped around why should we be using genetically modified organisms, relating to, again, climate change and drought and flooding and all the things that are happening. But this is so unique because this is, I think you're talking about CRISPR technology. This is something that's actually being used with mosquitoes, with living organisms, to hopefully skeptically combat a really serious issue. So yeah, take us down the rabbit hole of what's going on and help us understand what's really happening there, and why you're so passionate about this.
Yeah, I would love to share a presentation here and kind of talk through what's going on with the current project and the bigger picture, and the concerns about this that this is why the more that I learned, and I have other researchers that I've been working with, and the more that we've learned, the more concerned we became about it. So I'm gonna do a screen share here, and we'll talk some more about what's happening with this project. So
Great.
yeah, this is East Maui, the project area outlined in red. It's 64,666 acres, which is almost 14% of the entire land area of the island. And it's natural reserve and conservation area, remote forest primarily. There's a lot of endangered species up there. And that's supposed to be the purpose of this project, is to protect specifically the endangered native honeycreeper birds from avian malaria that the southern house mosquitoes up in that project area are transmitting. And so we can talk more about why that may actually backfire, but that's supposed to be the intended purpose. So you can see it's a huge area here. It's also, there's very close nearby. People live in these areas, bordering that area. Some of the forest reserve and the hunting area, those are places where people will be. So not just remote areas. And this is an experiment, this project that they're doing here initially with the Culex Q is the southern house mosquito. They've never used this mosquito before with this technology, which is we won't go too much in the details of what it is, but what they do is they put a bacteria in the mosquito in the lab, and it's called Wolbachia, and it's supposed to cause the mosquitoes to be incompatible with the mosquitoes existing here because of the bacteria and how that functions. They would not have viable offspring. So that's the intention. Again, there's more to that than what they've presented, but this mosquito species, southern house mosquito, has never been used for this purpose. They want to release up to 775,992,000 of these mosquitoes a week, and that's for at least the next 20 years, and potentially into perpetuity is what their documents related to the project are saying. So either these mosquitoes or other mosquitoes. This is kind of a Trojan horse for multiple mosquito things that they want to explore here. And the mosquitoes are actually, it's a whole process in the lab that we did a FOIA request for, and they're withholding that information. But we do know from their own documents with the EPA that the Wolbachia bacteria itself is originating from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. So it is a foreign bacteria. The mosquitoes are from Palmyra Atoll, and then there's going to be a breeding process. And I think there will be mosquitoes and or bacteria from Hawaii involved, but they're not disclosing the details of that. And there's also a strain of bacteria in their documents that doesn't even exist here in Hawaii that they want to bring in. So our concerns focused on this part of what they're doing is the avian malaria is transmitted by these mosquitoes. Of course, that's the point of the project. But we have peer-reviewed studies that are showing that this Wolbachia bacteria can cause mosquitoes to become more capable of transmitting avian malaria. And they haven't actually tested that, done a study to see if this specific southern house mosquito with that strain of Wolbachia might be more able to transmit the avian malaria rather than less. And there's peer-reviewed studies showing that West Nile virus is another disease that Wolbachia can cause mosquitoes to become more capable of transmitting, and that disease birds and humans can get. So we're very concerned about that. There's additional diseases that these mosquitoes transmit, including avian pox that could kill the birds, heartworm that we would have to worry about with our other animals, human diseases, elephantiasis, West Nile virus, at least 2 kinds of encephalitis. They may even be a vector of Zika virus. And we have not been able to get any information on what pathogens they're even screening the mosquitoes for. That was another request in our FOIA request to the EPA, and they're withholding that information. So that's really concerning.
Well, if I may, can you hear me?
Yeah.
In the work that I've been doing for decades around sustainability and full spectrum regenerative design, what we have found is that nature has an innate, highly developed, million-year-old intelligence. So it's very disconcerting to say, okay, this is a problem that occurs in nature, but when human beings um, start to get involved, and we start to doing this kind of geoengineering and scientific manipulation of things, that a lot of times it doesn't turn out positive. So I'm just bringing this up as a point as far as within nature, if we can find natural occurring solutions for these problems and not always go towards science or even technologies that are in these experimental stages, it tends to work out much better. So I just wanted to add that. Please continue.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I don't feel that they've explored enough of those alternatives because they have an agenda here. So let's look at that. So what's happening here? It's not. Oh, yeah. Okay, so again, this is just some of the concerns that we have. There's no biosecurity protocols, pathogen screenings. They're not looking at the issue of the male mosquitoes that they're intending to release, transmitting bacteria and pathogens to females. And they can transmit those different ways, and the females can spread disease. And they will be releasing females as well, even though they've said they're not, but they will accidentally be releasing females. And the EPA guidelines allow them to release over 3,000 females a week with this project on Maui. And those females can bite, breed, spread disease. And here we can see that the females, just one released, can end up producing another 160,000 more through the breeding in her lifespan. So that's something to worry about. And then we find out that not only are they doing this bird focused project, but they also have another project going on through the Department of Health here, where they're bringing in 2 more mosquito species, and they intend to release those ground release, so cars, trucks, ATVs, possibly through town. We don't even know. They won't give us any information on that at this point, but there's a whole other project going on that they're not disclosing any information to the public about, where they want to use the mosquitoes to target mosquitoes of public health concern, basically. So they've presented one thing, and they have a whole other thing going on. And they have what's called an environmental assessment. It's like a very limited look at the overall project, but for all islands for this separate situation with the mosquitoes for human disease.
And could you just backtrack for a moment? And there's a lot of information for people to assimilate. Who exactly is the deciding agencies and the people who are doing the distribution of the mosquitoes?
Yeah, so this project for the avian malaria portion of the project, it's a multi-agency partnership called Birds Not Mosquitoes through the state, and it's state agencies, including, I would say the lead agency is our Department of Land and Natural Resources. Department of Health is also involved, and then there's federal agencies involved, the National Park Service, the U.S. Geological Survey, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So there's multiple agencies involved, primarily government, state and federal government agencies, and a couple of non-governmental organizations also involved. And the release of the mosquitoes, they haven't detailed which agency will be responsible for the physical release of the mosquitoes. It's going to be done by drone and by helicopter, and so it has to be done, it has to be licensed drone operators, and yeah.
And if I understand, I've seen some videos. Of course, these days anything could be fabricated, but I understand it's already begun with the releasing of them, correct?
Yeah, actually, even though we went through the official process that you do to say you haven't studied this enough and you haven't followed the HEPA process, the Hawaii Environmental Policy Act process. We think that you need to do an environmental impact statement. So we're in the process of all that in the courts, and they said, well, we're going to just go ahead and release them. And so they started doing that in mid May. And shortly after they approved the project, they just started releasing them. We think it's just the initial studies, so not the millions of mosquitoes, but nevertheless, we didn't agree to this, and we are in court. We have a separate TRO and preliminary injunction hearing that's still in progress, and
So basically, they're already rolling out this program, kind of guinea pigging people and wildlife to see if it actually works without getting full authorization or at least the consent of the people that are being affected by this, it sounds like.
Yeah, I would say they didn't listen to the people at all because, there was overwhelming opposition in their meetings leading up to the approval of this. And this was again through the DLNR, the Department of Land and Natural Resources, that did the approval process for the project. And, there were meetings ahead of time where we submitted testimony, pages and pages of the research and the peer-reviewed studies and the expert opinions. And they just were going to steamroll right through this and disregard our concerns and testimony and the voice of the people, and that's what they're continuing to do, and that's why we're in court. And
Well, that is kind of an MO, I will say right now. There's a lot of experimental things in many areas, and I don't want to necessarily say where because that becomes a divisive issue. But even with the last 4 years and what we've endured, there's a lot of experimental things that are being rolled out right now. We just yesterday had the big activation of the federal emergency alarm system that was using wireless through the 5G networks. And we know that 5G has a level of radiation that can be extremely detrimental to people. So again, it's just one more thing on top of the MO of what's happening. So let's do this. In the time we have left, I want to make sure I get your information at the end. You have such a great PowerPoint. Let's talk a little more about that. And then at the end, we'd like to explore what are some alternatives and solutions, because there's so many issues out there. And unless we can really look at solutions, it's hard to change the narrative, especially for those people who are rushing forward with these agendas.
right. Yeah, so I'll just show a few more things that we discovered here that explains why they had every intention of just moving forward with their agenda no matter what. We could have presented, any number of things, and we did, and they don't care. And here's why. So it turns out that this DLNR, the lead agency, actually has a lab already. This is all their own documents, which you can see at the bottom of the documents I've referenced. And on our website, we have the actual documents if anyone wants to take a look. But the DLNR has a lab. They've been funded by unknown sources at this point. We don't know who is funding them to build out an insectary where they intend to mass produce these mosquitoes for release on the islands. So there we have the clear motive for disregarding the will of the people and the safety of our health and our environment.
Well, it's very interesting. It's very interesting you say that, and not to you know in the Stockton, Fresno area of California, that was an illegitimate lab that had lots of specimens. It was actually a biological lab, and they traced it back to a Chinese company because someone noticed refuse and hoses coming out of this building along the Sacramento River area. And when they went and did a deeper investigation, they found petri dishes and a whole bio lab that was completely operating without any knowledge of local authorities, with a lot of things, again, different flus, different viruses that were being facilitated here in our country without any awareness. And that was major news that just happened, probably about a month ago in California. So again, the lack of regulation or keeping track of these labs and, the mysterious players behind them and who's doing business or who's doing these things it's a little bit shady. So again, I just wanted to add that. So please continue. Great presentation.
Yeah, thank you. And we have been following that story. And, you do have to wonder, because they're not being forthcoming about a lot of this, what else might be going on? What are they experimenting with and not telling us about? And even just the idea that having a lab here that's doing this kind of work with mosquitoes that are used for bioweaponry, and that's well known globally and has been brought up on a global scale as a concern. We don't want to be targeted, have our state be targeted because they have these labs, that we haven't even agreed to whatever they are doing there, what we're coming to find out about and what they're not going to tell us about. So yeah, that's definitely an issue. Okay, so basically, they are talking about, in this lab that they want to mass produce the Wolbachia bacteria infected mosquitoes that we're talking about for this project that they're already doing and intending to do for human health. But they are also talking about the bigger picture. They want to move into these gene drives and synthetic biology control tools, and they want to do something called PGSIT with mosquitoes, precision guided sterile insect technique, and that is CRISPR technology, as you were talking about in the beginning, which we know can be very dangerous. There can be mutations and all kinds of unintended consequences to that. And so that is part of their bigger picture plan with this lab. And to not have disclosed that to the public, we found this in the documents connected to the project, but not in the document that was presented to the public before this was approved. So we don't like that. And then here's a bigger picture talking about more of what this is from another document connected to the project from the Department of the Interior that is funding the project, and talking about how they want to move into gene drives and this PGSIT. They want to improve malaria resistance in birds, which, you might go, well, that could be a good thing. What might be going on there? But they're also talking about here improving genetics and animal care facilities in Hawaii. They want to research synthetic biology. IIT advances. IIT is this incompatible insect technique with the mosquitoes. So that could be combinations of technologies doing different things with the genetics, even with the mosquitoes.
Well, that's very, very interesting. Again, not to disturb your flow, but I lived in Santa Cruz and Berkeley, California area when they had the issue with the brown moths destroying California's agriculture, and they proceeded to move forward with spraying what was called LBAM, which was a hormonal affecting chemical that they basically aerosol sprayed over Santa Cruz and parts of Berkeley, where there was a huge outcry from people and they stopped. But, part of me is thinking like, oh yeah, what could possibly go wrong with these things? And if we look at the history of, and I will say I'm very proud to live in the United States. I consider myself fairly patriotic, and I love the freedoms that this country allow. But I look back through history. Oh, Agent Orange, people that were in the Vietnam War. What could possibly go wrong? And of course, the fallout from that was horrific. And then if we look even more recently to depleted uranium that was used in a lot of like Desert Storm by the military industrial complex, a lot of people got radiation sickness and died. So again, this is not a rare situation where we see ignorant leadership and other agendas, usually geared around research and profit centric. Even if we even look at what's happened recently with the rolling out and the lack of any real true efficacy around the vaccinations. And again, there's a ton of research out there. It even came to the English Parliament, where it was less than 1% of people that were actually benefiting. But it's like, people say, well, this is good, technology is good. And yes, there is good technology, but when people don't see the track record of these things that get rolled out, especially experimental, what could possibly happen? Well, the track record is pretty obvious of what can happen. And it's a lot of things that can harm people and can harm nature and harm our environment and really can have horrifically devastating effects, especially when people start to micromanage nature, which has a natural intelligence, and think that the human mind is more intelligent than nature. So I just wanted to add that to the discourse, that you're not talking about anything unusual. This goes right along in stride with a lot of the other issues that have occurred, over really, decades, um, through many different agencies, from the pharmaceutical industries to the petroleum industries to the military industrial complex. It's like, like cigarettes, they found out, oh, what could possibly happen? Cigarettes are healthy, they're sexy. Well, cancer. And again, we go through all of these different things about how things are greenwashed and whitewashed and actually camouflage as positive. But then years later, we look back and we find out, oh, wow, this was a really bad idea. So again, let's go back to your great presentation. We have about another 5 to 8 minutes left. I know we live in an age of attention deficit, and I want to make sure we get right to the heart of this, talk about some solutions, and people can be in touch with you to find out more. So please continue.
Perfect. Yeah, and it's the lack of consent too of the people. It's one thing to be, which I don't even agree with some of the experimenting that they're doing in the labs, but just releasing that on our environment and on the people. No, that's not okay. So they're talking about here these different things they want to get into, synthetic biology, which is, that's a whole can of worms. But I think that's a lot of the bigger picture of what's going on this island, is that just this biotech takeover, the synthetic biology, the, tagging and tracking of everything. And they're talking again, they want to possibly, release engineered mosquitoes. So they've made a big point. These aren't the GMO mosquitoes, and these guys don't know what they're talking about. But actually, turns out that's their plan all along. So that's coming. And then with talking about what can we do to develop ways to improve malaria resistance in birds, and we're thinking, well, that maybe they want to do something good. Okay. Turns out that these two guys here, and this is just one of the things that we're looking at as far as that goes, but these guys are with the U.S. Geological Survey, one of the partners in this multi-agency partnership for this mosquito release project, and they're the Pacific Island USGS, Atkinson and LaPointe, and they have this paper here, facilitated adaptation for conservation. Can gene editing save Hawaii's endangered birds from climate-driven avian malaria? And then when we get into that paper, they're talking about facilitated adaptation turns out to be rescuing a population or species using genetic engineering. Gene editing techniques, clustered, regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats, that's CRISPR-Cas9, might be used to mitigate direct population impacts, including disease susceptibility. So they want to engineer these birds in the lab with this CRISPR technology, manipulate their genetics. And they are specifically talking about the Eevee bird. That's one of the native honey creepers. And then they want to release that into the wild. And so one of the issues here, and I think you touched on this, but once they release these things into the wild, they can take over, and our natural environment is being desecrated. We didn't ask for the synthetic, man-made, manipulated. How is this honoring our native birds that they want to, they're going to decide what how to create the birds instead of the nature and God creating the birds? That is not honoring the ancestry and the beauty and the sacredness of these islands and these native birds. So
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. And again, I don't like to talk too much where it can cultivate or germinate divisiveness, because everybody wants to argue about everything these days, about the color of a tree. Are you left or are you right? Are you up or are you down? Are you he? Are you she? I mean, all these things have just become major points of divisiveness. But what we do want to talk about is that in 1992, I was at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, where 100 and I believe about 52 countries, I might be wrong, and I'm a journalist, so I like to be concise, all agreed upon Agenda 21, which there's 18 principles. And one of those principles, I believe it's number 18, has to deal with the amount of resources on the planet, and that the fact that there's almost 8 billion people and there's too many people. And there's kind of discussion about all the countries agreeing upon, like, how do we deal with this issue of potentially changing climate, lack of resources. And that brings up the whole concept of of depopulation. So that was Agenda 21, which became Agenda 2030, but which now has been changed and edited again to Agenda 2025 to accelerate because of the cascading acceleration of environmental collapse. They're pushing even faster, harder, and quicker, which puts us into these situations where, without our consent, there's a lot of stuff being done. I mean, right now in the whole livestock industry, thank God I'm vegetarian, but there's a lot of research being done and things with livestock and cattle and stuff that is getting into people's food chain, which gets into our bodies, which affects our health and our children's health, and also affects the environment. So again, I just want to touch on that quickly, not to say that I'm pontificating. This is the absolute truth, but again, what you're sharing right now is just in step with a whole larger agenda of what's happening right now. So we probably have about 3 to 5 minutes left. So again, continue. I love this presentation. And who's this character we're looking at right now?
This is the EEV scarlet honey creeper. This is the endangered native bird that they're talking about manipulating in the lab and creating their CRISPR version of. This is a natural one made by God and nature, and that's what we want to support. Is that is, we want to protect our natural world. And the theme that I would say is that, this biotech industry takeover, they've clearly targeted these islands, and we need to reclaim the nature, the history, the ancestry of these islands. For the native Hawaiians, these are their islands, and what happened here is beyond wrong. And it's getting it's a travesty where this is going. All of this, it's wrong. So I would say, looking at solutions, that's where I would be headed. And do want to point out that there was this executive order last year from the White House about biotechnology, and it specifically says we need to develop genetic engineering technologies and techniques to be able to write circuitry for cells and predictably program biology in the same way in which we write software and program computers. So that is everyone be on alert. That's the bigger picture of what's going on here. They want to be able to manipulate everything. There is some concerning funding tied to at least the initial lab, one of the labs that's providing the mosquitoes. There was some funding through the Gates Foundation for their initial launch of that technology. And of course, Soros is heavily invested in the other lab's parent company, Alphabet, which also is the parent company to Google. And that mosquito lab is Verily Life Sciences. And they want this to continue into perpetuity. The next island targeted is Kauai, and they're working on that now. But again, all islands they're targeting because they've got that lab and they have big plans. So this is just to show that they're saying in their document here, how do we ensure that this is a successful program with this IIT mosquito technology into perpetuity? How can we keep this going forever?
Well, I'm sure very much like we just discovered with the pharmaceutical industry, it was an $80 billion profit that was harvested because of the pandemic. And again, I'm not going to say too much either way leaning. I'm just presenting information. But there's a lot of money to be made. Again, the military industrial complex, what's happening with the war in Ukraine, the pharmaceutical industry, and of course, the petroleum industry also. So if people want more information, and I do like what you said, because with solutionaries, we do want to provide solutions. We can talk about the issues, but what are solutions? And I think you hit the nail on the head. One of them is looking towards indigenous communities and what we call traditional ecological knowledge, that this might have happened over hundreds or thousands of years before our colonial patriarchal system came over and basically colonized these areas. But before we finish, and I want to make sure we give your information, and maybe at the end we'll pull up the first slide of the presentation of Hawaii Unites. Do you know of any immediate solutions? And if not, that's fine. It's something we can explore. But any other ideas about what can be done?
Well, our immediate solution right now, again, is that we have challenged this project in court. And so we are looking for people to help us to continue that legal case going. So we do need funding for that. And then also raising awareness about the bigger picture of what's going on. I think we have a huge opportunity here in Hawaii now because people see that what happened here with the fires and with the bigger picture agenda of what they want to do with the lands and the controversy over the water rights, which I think is actually what this comes down to. Possibly even what's going on with this mosquito project, which is in a watershed area, could be tied to that, but could also affect the water. And so just really raising awareness, supporting the Native Hawaiian community, telling the truth, building alliances. And we very much need to be aware of the fact that our government agencies are going to be pushing these narratives that they are helping the indigenous peoples, when actually what they want to do is overtake everything with their biotech and their control grid. And so we just need to build alliances in our communities and really make sure everyone understands what's going on, and we are all working together to have a voice for the people. And we need to, here in Hawaii, these islands need to go back to the Native Hawaiians. And that might be a controversial thing to say, but it's high time. They have gone way too far. And it's
Absolutely. Well,
not
there's a
okay.
lot of people. There's a lot of people that are looking into the original agreements and treaties. I know there was a big pushback with lots of celebrities involved about putting the big telescope up on one of the sacred mountains of the Hawaiians, and it's still a very strong ohana or family of indigenous people there. I would like to put you in touch with some of our contacts in the indigenous community, because they might not even be aware, since many Native people don't necessarily follow the internet or social media or even the corporate news that we basically get fed, as far as television programming of what we're supposed to think, feel, and believe. And I think it's just really fascinating. There's so many issues to deal with right now. And I will say this: I worked for years on the whole Big Mountain uranium coal issue in northern Arizona along Black Mesa. And what's interesting is we have to look towards the traditional people and the spiritual leaders, because a lot of people actually do get paid to represent the tribes or the indigenous communities who have no bona fide credentials or authority to actually represent tribes who do sell off water rights and land rights and help to continue the genocide of these indigenous cultures. So again, the uranium and coal mining that's happening there, the dewaterizing of the Colorado Plateau and the Big Mountain area, and yeah, just like the Hopi elders I work with, we can only tell people by their actions, their words, their skin color, their gender, their age, their religion, the clothes they wear. Does not necessarily express who they truly are. And we really have to keep our eye on the actions and what people are doing and not saying, because we live in the age of again, corporate media. There's a lot of agendas and programs and greenwashing and whitewashing and marketing that come into play. So I want to thank you for your incredible breadth of knowledge, the research you've done this on. And I keep looking at the guitar and the American flag. I keep expecting maybe Willie Nelson to pop out and start singing a song or something there. But
He's welcome.
yeah,
Tell him to
I
come on
really
over.
absolutely. So maybe we can just before we finish, you can share how people can get in touch through the website or through you and learn more about this. And also maybe we'll go back to that original slide, which was a great way we can finish the broadcast today. But I do want to thank you for bringing this to our awareness, and we will be sharing this through Golden Road TV and radio, and we'll be sharing it through other outlets along with Regenerative Media TV. And within the next day or two, keeping up with production and all the issues in the world, we'll make this available to you that you can share as a informative introduction to people. Because a lot of times, it's hard to talk to thousands of people, so we can benefit from the use of independent media. So again, thank you. And how would people be in contact? And I'd love to see that slide again.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm gonna share that. This is our website, hawaiiunites.org, and we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We're focused on protecting our environment and our natural resources. And we are looking for some help with our legal case. So that's our hawaiiunites.org/donate. If anyone wants to help us out with that, we could really use some support over here. I know there's a lot to support here right now, so definitely, let's continue to support the people that have lost everything. And I want to definitely make a mention of that is very much going to be an ongoing situation for a long time as well. And we're going to start focusing more on some of the issues there with the environment and with the Native Hawaiian rights. But at this point right now, we are focused on our legal case, which we should be moving back into finding out a scheduling for our hearing moving forward on that. So we are looking for some help to keep that legal case going. So hawaiiunites.org/donate and hawaiiunites.org to just take a look at what's going on here with this mosquito project and, how this could affect these beautiful sacred lands here.
Great. Thank you so much. Again, I want to thank Tina Lee for sharing very in-depth. Sure, we could talk for hours about this topic, about what's happening right now in an area that's having simultaneous issues. And so thank you for bringing this to our awareness of what's happening. And I want to thank everyone for taking time out of your life to support independent media and to support investigative journalism. I'm Michael DiMartino, and this is another episode of Solutionaries here on Golden Road TV and radio, and now our newly launched Regenerative Media TV, which you can find rmtvonline.com. So thank you. And again, thanks for your time, Tina. And we'll check back maybe in a few weeks or a month or so when there's maybe some more updates.
Thank you so much. And thanks for the opportunity to let people know what's going on over here.
Absolutely. Have a great rest of your day. We'll try to stay. I was recently called an apocalyptimist, even though all these things are happening and a lot of people are, it's the end of the world. And I still remain optimistic because the part of it is we, in our own sovereignty, we have to take back our power, and we can't depend on broken, toxic leadership. We all have to be part of really the true spirit of democracy, or what we call sociocracy, and to helping to architect our society and hopefully more move towards a more positive future.